Welcome to the Revo Report. We're inspiring faith with reason and reason with faith. 2002, when you started reading your Bible, when you read through the New Testament first. Is there a point, though, where there was doubt that you kind of went backwards, or was it just kind of a continuous, these past over 20 years? We have a giveaway announcement today. We will be giving away Surviving in an Angry World by Charles Stanley, the Bible Study Teacher's Guide, right there, Bluetooth headphones right over here, open ear, very comfortable. And also we will be giving away this very cool old school analog watch. All you need to do is be subscribed, like this video, comment down below, and we will do a random draw next week to see who the winner is. Make sure to also hit that bell notification to be notified, because we will announce it in one of our videos next week. All right, let's get back into it.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that there was doubt, which is not trying to be pious or something. To me, it just seems so clearly right. But there were a lot of issues along the way. One is rationally justifying my own beliefs in trusting the Bible and so on for myself. Then there's another, trying to persuade somebody else who doesn't believe to become a Christian and to trust the Bible. Those are two different things. Because what is sufficient to help persuade that person is not necessarily what is objectively rational that's sufficient for me to warrant my faith. Sometimes you need more to reach the other person who, coming from whatever perspective they're coming from. So for myself, it was really I need to answer at times, let's say, apparent contradictions of the Bible or objections on theological grounds, on ethical grounds, on historical, scientific, whatever. So yeah, for me, it's really been a journey over the years, and it's really just continuous I want good and consistent answers, not just answers. I want good and consistent answers to all of those issues that can come up for myself. And then, over time, it was primarily driven for myself. Secondarily, I'm also thinking about other people I'm trying to reach, even my family and other people. But first for myself. And then I'm also thinking, okay, well, now I started going to Tyndale. Basically, I went there not because I thought I'm going to be a pastor necessarily. Well, sort of, I think by that point I thought that. But I just sensed kind of if you can call it a calling. I usually don't like to use that language anymore myself. But if we're going to call it a calling, just sense of purpose for my life is going to be focused on the Word, on the Scriptures, helping people be introduced to it, and then helping people understand it. So both for believers to grow in understanding and deepen their theological education, understanding of it, and then people who don't know to be introduced to it in a way that they'll understand and they'll see why it's true. So that's really the sense of my purpose for life, really, in serving the Lord, is focused in both those two ways. And so it just naturally led into pursuing pastoral ministry and stuff like that, and going to school and et cetera. Right. Yeah.
What's interesting, what you said was that, the things that convince me are not going to be the same things that convince others. And that's so true, right? Yeah. Because we can use the same things that brought us to know Jesus and share with somebody else, and it doesn't even connect with them, right? And so how did that, from Tyndale, how did that then spark your interest to delve into Islam?
Yeah, so in the general thing is that wanting to just share with anybody, right? Islam was not something at all on my radar for the first number of years. I think it was maybe in my last year at Tyndale that I had a course called Christianity and Islam. And that was really the first time I was kind of introduced to it. I might have learned a little bit online or something before that, but this was kind of before a lot of the YouTube stuff took off and online content. And so I knew I'm in the GTA. I'm not planning to leave the GTA. So as long as I'm in the GTA, the Muslim population is growing rapidly. And I'm somebody, I like to be ready. So I want to prepare myself for those conversations, even if I don't know any yet. Eventually I'm going to. And eventually the people in the church, God willing that I'm pastoring, they're also going to know them, and they need to be equipped to talk to them. So that was kind of what's behind that. And that, of course, you can't learn everything about everything, but overall I'm kind of a generalist. So I like to have the big picture and evidence and answers for pretty much the full gamut of issues. Obviously, you can't go deep on everything. So on the one hand, but then I'm also trying to specialize now in certain things. So in that, you can only do so much. And so for the time being, that's where my focus is right now, is specializing more in researching Islam and talking to Muslims. How that started, going back to that course a number of years ago, it didn't turn into anything immediately. I do remember that there was a guy, I was living in the dorms, and there was a guy in the dorm who had gone downtown, Yonge and Dundas, where the Dawa guys, like the evangelists for Islam,
Dawa is
like inviting to Islam. Okay?
That's why there's like Dawa.
That was equivalent of evangelism.
Right.
So they gave out Quran. So the guy he had a Quran with him, and he was in the dorms, and he was like, anybody want this? I'm not going to read it. And I took it from him. And at some point along the way, I read that Quran to begin with. And I started taking like tons of notes. I'm trying to like understand it on its own terms and not bring the Christian apologetic framework to it, but first like try to understand it on its own terms. Mm-hmm. And what can I justify to say is based in the Quran and not just, there are a lot of typical lines of arguments that Christians use with any other perspective, but specifically, like with Muslims, they have specific arguments that they always use. And I would actually say, look, the Christians mostly are doing the wrong stuff. And one, it's not persuasive to Muslims, and that's what I was saying before, is there's a difference between what's persuasive to them and what's persuasive or sufficient for me to warrant my own faith, right? Defending their faith rationally is not the same, it's not going to necessarily convince them. It might stop me from leaving my faith, let's say, but it's not going to help them come over. So yeah, I found over time, over the years, especially the last 5 to 7 years, where I've started really being more intensely focused on it, that, yeah, there's a lot of bad stuff out there, and incorrect things, misleading information that Christians keep repeating, and that is just inaccurate. And if you talk to more informed Muslims, not nominal Muslims, they have answers to the vast majority of issues that Christians are going to present to them. And so Christians are really they're ill-equipped already, and now when they're hearing stuff online, which is mostly just bad argumentation or straw men or just really overtly offensive stuff that will just burn bridges and not help a Muslim hear you out, and is not persuasive to them. Even if it's a good argument, it's not persuasive to them. So for me, I don't want to do any of that stuff. I want to know what is the most optimal thing that has a chance of actually penetrating and helping them reconsider, right? That's based in truth, that's based in accurately representing their side and our side. Why would it's a waste of time. That's kind of my opinion.
And one of the things that you said was that the Muslim population, at least here in Toronto, is growing. And I think in a lot of areas, right? Is it growing much more rapidly than the Christian population? And is that just due to birth rates, or is that actual conversions? Do you think that's telling that our evangelism or our current apologetics is not working right now because, we're not seeing the conversion rate, we're not engaging?
Christians, by and large, are not converting Muslims, I would say. So, but let's go to the other side. So Muslims are converting nominal Christians, for sure. There is a lot, I would kind of resist. It's funny, I'm just kind of counter to what a lot of typical things you're going to hear constantly repeated online, talking about, there's a tsunami of apostasy. Well, there are a lot of people leaving Islam and becoming atheists, but there are not many Muslims leaving Islam becoming Christians. And there's a conflation of those two things that's often said by Christian apologists and missionaries who think that there are so many Muslims becoming Christians. Now, there are some, but I would actually say those are mostly not, sometimes I try to be blunt about it, they're not necessarily real Muslims. They're mostly nominal. And I would actually say it's the same thing, Christians becoming Muslims. It's not like typically the real Christian. And obviously we're going to have a theological question about it anyway. Were they a real Christian? Were they born again? But even put that aside, like to what extent was their knowledge of the faith and the scriptures, right? For them to become a Muslim, it's pretty hard for you to be really knowledgeable to become a Muslim, in my opinion, right? And from just what I see, when you hear testimonies, their testimonies of people, of reverts, that's what they call people who become Muslims, right? It's the same thing I see in almost all the testimonies I've heard or read of former Muslims becoming Christians, is pretty much all of them are nominal.
What are the common things that